I'll be honest, as a Georgia fan, this was one of the I forgot what this felt like. I actually forgot what it felt like to really be having to sweat through. Just this is week 5. Just sweating out a week 5 win. Though I guess Missouri a year ago was kind of the last one that I really had to. That was a game that I really didn't think was going to be quite that close. And yeah, but it at the same time, I don't know if this makes sense or not. Georgia disappointed, right? And Georgia didn't look good. But at the same time, after Georgia had won and like we moved on into the evening, it still felt really good just to beat your rival and be 5-0. Like in some ways disappointed with the team, and yet in other ways grateful just to be here. 5-0. Like that's I don't know. It was an interesting, yeah, kind of some interesting feelings Saturday night.
Yeah, I actually got to watch the fourth quarter of that game with a room full of Georgia fans. So that was kind of fun just to kind of see them going through it and then relate to it completely later in the evening as a Notre Dame fan. So, well, let's kind of run through the scores. Friday night, Louisville beat NC State 13-10. Louisville's now 5-0. Not someone most people are probably paying attention to, but they're now ranked, I believe, for the first time this year. So
yeah,
good on them. Probably the bigger game Friday night, Oregon State beat Utah 21-7. Utah's first loss of the season. What did you see in this game? And yeah, I guess what were your thoughts? Obviously, Utah struggling offensively, which is nothing new, but it hadn't actually cost them a game yet this year.
Yeah, Oregon State's very physical. I think that's what kind of stood out. Like on the so Utah had to go to their place. Utah without Cam Rising can be a bit of a struggle on offense. Like they struggle to score points. They do, and like part of it's Oregon State's just really good. Like you can't just it's not just one or the other. It's a combination of both. But Utah needs Cam Rising back badly. And Oregon State's going to make some noise. Like Oregon State's going to knock off some teams in what's a very, very deep Pac-12. We talk about it every week. Oregon State's they're not fading away. They are one of the faces in the crowd. If things go right for them, I mean, this is an Oregon State team that beat Oregon a year ago. Like they have the potential to get to a Pac-12 championship game if they continue to win football games. This was a huge step in the right direction. This was, I mean, hey, yeah, I know the Oregon State fans stormed the field and yeah, whatever. It was a convincing win over a top 10 team. Enough said. Like that's enough said. Really big win for Oregon State and the Beavers.
I was really impressed by their defense a week after kind of getting run a little bit by Washington State. Like their defense was not able to stop Wazoo very much at all. And they held Utah to 7 points. Nate Johnson got to start at quarterback and looked horrific, honestly. And his receivers didn't help him out much. But yeah, I was just really impressed by Oregon State in this game. Also, Friday night, BYU beat Cincinnati 35-27. And then we move on to Saturday's slate. Quite a lot happening Saturday. Maybe one of the headliners of the early slate, Kentucky just stomping Florida 33-14 in a rivalry game there. I mean, the obvious story here is the running back, obviously. Ray Davis of Kentucky, the Vanderbilt transfer, goes for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. Was that surprising to you, or what were you expecting going into this game?
Yes, I mean, very surprising. Billy Napier comes from the Nick Saban school of thought, right? Like he coached underneath him. We're going to be physical. We're going to stop the run. We may give up explosive pass plays, but we will stop the run somehow. You're not going to run the ball on us. And Kentucky did just that. This is a Kentucky offense, and especially an offensive line, that was not good last year. At offensive line in particular. And to see them come out, this is a big home win for Kentucky. They're now 5-0. The offensive line playing really well, especially there against Florida, like coming into their own, man. Like that's a transfer running back. You talked about Ray Davis. He had 280 something rushing yards for them. Like that, they're legitimate. Like Kentucky's a good football team. We almost forget about Devin Leary, who a lot of schools would have loved to, play for them coming out of the transfer portal from NC State. So they've got some decent receivers. I was impressed. Like, how could you not be? How could you not be really impressed with that Kentucky win? Didn't see it coming. I thought Florida was the more likely team to do that. If you were going to tell me that one team was going to run all over the other one, I thought that it would have been Florida just being more physical. But full credit to Kentucky. That was impressive. it sets up a really big game for them this weekend.
Yeah, it does. By the way, like just kind of along the same lines of if you would have told me whatever, if you'd have told me Kentucky wins this game by 19 points, I would not have believed you if you'd have also said that Devin Leary would complete 45% of his passes for 3.5 yards per attempt.
Right.
So not exactly a sterling game by the quarterback there, but it doesn't matter when you can just run the ball that well. So impressive win by Kentucky. Also, Clemson, impressive win by them. The spread right there was just under a touchdown against Syracuse, but Clemson, not a whole lot of doubt. A lot of doubt there, 31-14. Clemson has 2 losses, but I don't really feel all that down on them as much as I thought I would if I knew they would have 2 losses this early in the season.
I do think they're finding themselves a little bit on offense. You're seeing more rhythm from Klubnik. The receiver, Tyler Brown, the young kid, is good.
Yeah.
Like I watched a lot of this Clemson Syracuse game. I watched large chunks of it. They're good. Like, and then you compare that with like with Shipley, Maffa, the running back tandem, who are, I mean, they're obviously studs. So Clemson is finding themselves a little bit on offense. And yeah, for them, by Clemson's lofty standards, it's too little too late. Like I understand that. Clemson's good. Like we can just kind of come in and agree on that. They lost to a good Duke team, an underrated Duke team, and they lost to Florida State. And like those are losses, and fair enough. But Clemson should be ranked. Clemson is one of the 25 best teams in the country today. Like they would beat a number of teams in the top 25. So they're still currently not ranked. I'm seeing them progress. Like I've looked at it that way, and now they fell short of their goals, right? Like I mean, they wanted to be a playoff team. I picked them to go to the playoff. They're not getting there. They are not on that level. But it's not all lost yet for Clemson. Not all is lost.
I'm okay with them not being ranked, but from a power ranking standpoint, I would power rank them in the top 15 at least, maybe the top 10. They will be ranked by the time they play Notre Dame in November. And yeah, as a Notre Dame fan, that game's going to worry me, regardless of what Notre Dame does between now and then. That will be a scary game for sure.
Right.
Okay, Texas A&M and Arkansas, kind of a neat little rivalry there. A&M wins this game 34-22. Max Johnson, obviously the starter for A&M from here on out with Connor Wigman out for the season. Played pretty well, like nothing spectacular, but did his job. Arkansas continues to struggle. They just feel a little bit broken to me. Like I don't think they made a good offensive coordinator hire, and that matters a lot.
It does. I mean, there was clearly a downgrade, right? Like when you lose someone like Kendall Briles, kind of a I don't know if you call him a savant. I don't know but he was definitely a free thinker. He was very innovative. You can at least give him that, no matter what you want to say about, him personally or the Briles family. He was innovative, and he made KJ Jefferson really good. Like he made that running game work for Arkansas, and they've clearly taken a step back without it. On the other side, Texas A&M, they had that really bad loss to Miami. They did. Like that happened, but they're 4-1. Like that was the only game that they have lost. They've kind of that game has kind of kept them under the radar. That bad loss to Miami,
right.
People saw that. People then forgot about that team and kind of wrote them off. They're 4-1. They have a chance this weekend to go and really make some noise, a home game when Alabama comes in. Texas A&M they're starting to put up points too. I don't think people are really paying attention to this. They're not just 4-1 straight up. They're also 4-1 against the spread. They're covering point spreads. That's not something that they did before. I'm kind of impressed. This is kind of the same thing, maybe a little bit with Clemson. It's an offense that's finding itself. They're starting to score more points. I don't think there's going to be a huge drop off from Wegman to Max Johnson. I think Max Johnson's a good quarterback. Like I think of all the teams that could afford to go to a backup quarterback, I think A&M was one of the top ones. I think they had a good second quarterback in place. I think they're going to put up points this year. I think they're going to knock off some teams that they shouldn't. And they can still, I mean, they're currently undefeated in the SEC. This is an SEC West that is straight up for grabs right now. Yeah. Like anyone could win that SEC West. A&M's still in there. Like let's not forget about them. I think this is they keep taking steps. They keep taking steps in the right direction for the Aggies.
I think we can already definitively say that Bobby Petrino has their offense in a better spot than it was a year ago. Like, I don't know if I don't know if we can definitively say that was a grand slam hire, but it absolutely raised the level of their offense.
There's no question. Even from just a number standpoint, they're just scoring more points. Like they're covering these point spreads, not something they did last year. They couldn't do that. The talent, A&M has the talent. The talent's just sitting there. And you're right. I'm not going to say it's a perfect hire, but they're improving. Like this is an A&M team that's growing into themselves. And that's exciting. Frankly, you're still, like I said, you're undefeated in the SEC, an SEC West that anyone could win right now. So yeah, it's all out there for A&M, and I don't think anyone's talking about that yet. People kind of forgot about A&M, really.
Yeah, on the other side, I don't even want to speculate about this really, but I've heard it out there. Sam Pittman's buyout is a lot lower if he's under 500, and there's a very good chance that he will be under 500 soon. So I don't like that. I mean, he's done a good job at Arkansas for the most part, but yeah. All right, USC beats Colorado 48-41. Controlled the first half, and then, depending who you ask, they kind of put it in cruise control and thought the game was over, and then Colorado sort of stormed back and had a chance late. Took a lot of time to make it a one-score game where they had to kick a onside kick, and just weren't able to recover. But yeah, obviously a close game, closer than it would have appeared. What were your thoughts on this game?
I'm not sure. Like, okay.
It's kind of weird, right?
USC's defense is not good.
No.
They are really not good. This is a Colorado team that ran for 193 against them. They almost ran for 200 yards. This Colorado team couldn't run against anybody all year. They pretty much abandoned it against certain teams, especially against Oregon, obviously. But like they didn't run the ball well against anyone they've played to this point. And yet they outrush USC by over 100 yards. Like that was surprising for me. And like you can't just say that it was all mop-up duty. You know, because USC did. They came out and they scored a whole bunch of points early. And the game wasn't really in question. Like it really wasn't. By halftime, the game was kind of over. But like there's no question that USC was soft. Like they were soft against the run. And like that's that's been the concern, right? Like that's the concern's the same as what it was last year. Like we know Caleb Williams is great and he throws for 6 touchdowns and good for him. But like he was great last year too, and you still lost a number of games and didn't make the playoff. Like we're kind of expecting USC to be taking the next step, and that defense is that's what needs to improve, right?
Yeah, I don't even know that my opinion of USC has changed all that much since the preseason, and they're almost halfway through the season. Like,
right,
we're going to see what they really are when they actually start playing good teams, and they just haven't. They just haven't done that yet. Their offense is absolutely good enough to beat everyone that's not really good. So, but yeah, we get to see some good games for them coming up. So excited about that. Okay. Boston College beats Virginia 27-24, kind of a sad ACC bowl game there. And the Pac-12's version of the same game, Cal beats Arizona State 24-21. Bowling Green upsets Georgia Tech 38-27. That's a rough look. Maryland, maybe the fourth best team, in the Big Ten. They beat Indiana 44-17, steamrolled them. Purdue beats Illinois 44-19. I think Illinois might just be trash this year. They were good last year, and they just haven't been all that good this year. So that's a rough look. Yeah. Baylor, big comeback for them. They beat UCF 36-35. Dave Aranda, he was about to be on the hottest of hot seats if they would have lost that game. But hey, who knows? Who knows what could happen? Good win for Baylor there. We got to talk about this one. Georgia, you mentioned it earlier, the way you felt as a Georgia fan. Georgia beats Auburn 27-20. I guess mostly you would say on the strength of Auburn's defense playing well and there being a couple turnovers. Is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, maybe a bit. I think Auburn was more physical than Georgia.
Sure.
Like Auburn ran the ball for 219 yards. Georgia ran the ball for 107. Again, 100-yard rushing difference. And the SEC, that just gets you beat. Like you lose most of those games. Georgia
Mhm.
does especially. Georgia doesn't get run on. Like that doesn't happen. And okay, like you go back the last number of years, and it's a graphic I think they even had on CBS during the game. But like who are the last four quarterbacks to beat Georgia? It was Bryce Young, it was Mac Jones, it was Joe Burrow in 2019, and it was Kyle Trask, I think, in 2020. All four of them were Heisman finalists. Like you
Mhm.
pretty much have to have a Heisman finalist to beat Georgia. Auburn has nothing near that at quarterback, and probably should have won this game. Maybe that's not fair. They could have won this game. They had opportunities to, but like they ran the ball so well, and I was that's what was surprising for me. Maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised as I was. It is Hugh Freeze. He's going to get 110% out of those guys, out of that team. Like, especially against a top ranked team. He's done this before. He's upset top teams at
Mhm.
home or on the road. Like he's done it before. He's no stranger to it. And just watching the game, yeah, like it was like Georgia has Brock Bowers, and like that, like no one, there was no answer for him. Like
Yeah.
there was no equal. Auburn had just there was nothing that Auburn could do about that. I was impressed with Auburn. Like Auburn played really, really well.
Mhm.
Yeah, Georgia, big picture for them. If we want to get into that, people are saying we should drop them in the polls. That's fine. Like I actually maybe even agree with you a
Someone
little
has
bit.
to be one.
Yeah, fair. I have no problem with it. I'm good either way. I know that like in the middle of the year last year, people were clamoring for Georgia had the same thing happen to them, the exact same thing, and people
Mhm.
dropped Georgia down to 4 or 5 in some of their own polls. Like it was that was just inaccurate. They were just wrong last year, a year ago, and will they be? Is the same thing valid this year? Is Georgia actually regressing? I don't know, maybe. I just think that after you win back-to-back championships, the standard is so high. Like what you have to do to impress people is so that bar is so high. I think it's really hard to do. At the end of the day, Georgia won on the road in Auburn. It's been a tough place for Georgia to go and win. Georgia has gotten hammered there on occasion. Like that
Mhm.
happens regularly. So it's good just to go there and win. I didn't have a whole lot. I felt good. I felt good Saturday night after the win. I was enjoying myself. So yeah, I don't know. I think Georgia will get better. Georgia's going to get better, and I think Auburn's going to get better too. Like that's where I
Mhm.
left it
Auburn needs a quarterback. Like
badly.
you,
Yeah.
you feel pretty good about their program, other than that, and what Hugh Freeze has been able to do there.
Right.
That last drive where they had a chance to send it to overtime, or I guess win with the 2 point conversion, where they're trying to score against Georgia to tie the game up at the end of the fourth
Mm-hmm.
quarter. Never once did I feel like it was going to happen. They were under 100 yards passing for the game, and it just kind of felt like Georgia at that point, they were just going to end the hopes. And yeah, so I guess I feel good about Auburn and their long term future. I don't feel great about this season just because of that huge hole at quarterback. Peyton Thorne is just not very good. And Georgia, I still don't know what to think about them because
Mm.
on one hand you can tell me they're probably still the best team in the country, and I can't really disagree with you. And on the other
Right.
hand, you can tell me you get 2014 Florida State or 2015 Ohio State vibes from them, and I sort of get that. Like,
Right.
when are they going to actually put it into fifth gear and
Right.
act like they're trying for a full game?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean it's a valid question. It hasn't happened yet. I mean, you've gotten Georgia's, 55 or 60% game so far.
Yeah.
Like it's been nowhere near 90 or 100%. Clearly. The one thing I was impressed with coming away from it was Carson Beck. I thought he played really well.
Mhm.
He was intercepted early in the game, wasn't really his fault. That dude was nails in the second half. Like he led a couple of huge drives. He was accurate. He was composed. They talked about, they used the word composed over and over again, but he really was. Like he didn't get sacked. He literally was not sacked. Part of that's really good offensive line play. Like Carson Beck's going to grow into that position too. So like I don't know. The whole thing that, you hear some people say that there's no real good teams. There's no elite teams this year. There's no teams that are elite. Let them grow into it, because we literally said that about Georgia last year. We said that about Georgia the year before. We actually said that about Alabama in 2020. Like, they're not elite. They're not elite. Well, yeah, they're not in week 5. They're not elite in week 5.
Right.
Let them grow into it. Let the season grow. Someone's going to win some of these big games that are coming up.
Mhm.
And yeah, someone's going to look really, really elite by the end of the year. And will it be Georgia? Maybe, maybe not. Give it time. Just let it bake.
Yep. All right. Michigan beat Nebraska 45-7. Texas squashes Kansas for the second year in a row, 40-14. The game was deceptively close on the scoreboard for a while, but it never really felt like it was. I don't know. Like, it always kind of felt like Texas was clearly the better team, and then it ended up showing in the final score.
Yeah, I watched just a little bit of it. I didn't catch much, but yeah, no, completely agree. Texas is pretty dominant. Like, this is a game where Texas would have played down to the level. Like, we keep talking about that. Like, Texas, they get tripped up by someone that they just shouldn't, in years past, and they're not this year. They're not. They seem to be different.
Right. Exactly. Texas Tech beat Houston 49-28. Memphis beat Boise State, big G5 matchup there, 35-32. Missouri beats Vanderbilt 38-21. Missouri is 5-0. Just keep an eye open for them. Like, they're one of 3 SEC teams that's undefeated alongside Kentucky and Georgia. So that's a little weird, but yeah, they're doing pretty well this year. A huge game in the evening that was just absolute bananas. Ole Miss beats LSU 55-49.
Yeah.
Both offenses just rolling up yards and points. Any takeaways from this game?
Did you see the play where Jane Daniels was like rolling out, and he kind of got past 2 guys, and he kind of turns the corner and runs directly into an oncoming safety who just trucks him.
It happens once a game.
Yeah, the ball goes flying into the air like that was an epic hit. Like, that was awesome. It was fun to watch. Like, I didn't have a dog in the fight. Well, okay, that's not true. I had money on Ole Miss covering. So yes, maybe I did have technically a dog in the fight, but it was just from a neutral standpoint, it was a fantastic game. If you don't like defense, like, defense was completely optional. My question that I have, of all the really good coaches that Brian Kelly has had under him, and he's had some really good defensive coordinators under his tutelage and staff.
Mm-hmm.
How did we end up here? How did you go to LSU and somehow have the worst defensive coordinator that you've had in a long time? Like, that one didn't really make sense to me. Part of it, Ole Miss has good offense. Part of it's that. But that was some bad defense by both teams.
I tend to agree. I don't know that this tells us that these offenses are all that great. I think it's more about the defenses being pretty bad. Not that these offenses weren't solid. I don't think these offenses have both been shut out by really good teams this year. Not literally shut out as in 0 points, but they have definitely shut down. Yeah. I'm a little concerned about both of these schools for this season. Kelly has been known to be very hit and miss with coordinator hires. He's hired some absolutely incredible coordinators, and he's also hired some real terrible duds. Brian Van Gorder.
Didn't he hire Mike Elko to be a defensive coordinator once upon a time? And then also Marcus Freeman as well. He
hired Mike Elko, Clark Lee, and Marcus Freeman consecutively at defensive coordinator. And then Matt House just is not quite the same. So
it's not working.
It's just not the same.
Just to kind of wrap this game up, there was some legitimate NFL talent out there. Like LSU's receivers are legitimately as good as almost anyone else's receivers outside of maybe like Ohio State or Florida State. But Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors are future NFL guys. They're really good. And Jackson Dart with like Quinshon Judkins, they're really good. There's some really, really good talented ball players on these offenses. Not taking anything away from that. The tackling, I think, was just so atrocious. Like, it was so bad. They couldn't tackle anybody. No one could tackle. So, I think it was fun. You have to admit it was entertaining. Like, it came down to the very last play of the game, a 20-yard throw to the end zone that went off the guy's hands, and would have probably won the game for LSU. So, yeah, LSU at 2-3 now. That was, some people had them as a playoff team. Ole Miss 4-1. I know you lost to Alabama last week, but Ole Miss actually is going to have a say in the SEC West. So yeah, there's, again, it's the SEC West. Anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Right. Okay. Getting on later into the evening, Oklahoma beat Iowa State 50-20. Not a lot of thoughts on that one. Tennessee beat South Carolina 41-20, getting some revenge for last year. Obviously a huge, huge game for them. South Carolina is now 2-3, which is a little scary. Do we feel better about Tennessee coming out of this game?
I mean, I think I do. Like, Tennessee's, they're only 4-1. Like, they only had the one loss. I think we see some of these teams lose big games on a big stage, right? With like a large audience, and we just write them off because they didn't play well. Like Tennessee could easily turn this around. Tennessee has a ton of talent on offense. I think they're maybe a little overlooked, kind of in that same Texas A&M vein of teams that got written off after an early loss. I was impressed with them. Like, I think South Carolina's good. Like, I think Spencer Rattler's playing really well. And I think it was just that's a 21-point win. Like, something Georgia couldn't do. Like, that's a good win in my eyes.
I think Joe Milton obviously got a lot of the hype for Tennessee coming into the season.
Right.
Not a particularly great game from him. 2 interceptions, 239 yards. But the rushing game worked. They ran for 238 as a team. Yeah. And hey, you put up 41 points in the SEC, you're okay with that, regardless of how it happens. So
Agreed.
Very interesting to see how Tennessee can do going forward, maybe when they start playing a few better teams. Notre Dame and Duke. This was one of the higher ranked matchups of the week. College game day was at Duke for the first time. And just a weird game. I have lots of thoughts, obviously, as a Notre Dame fan, but I wanted to hear your perspective as the neutral guy.
It was a game that Notre Dame just needed to get through. Like, sure. I don't care. I don't care about how it looked, and I don't care that you really needed to come from behind late. Sam Hartman would stick his face in a fan to get a win. Like, that guy, he laid it all on the line on that last drive. It's a game Notre Dame wasn't at their best, clearly. It's against a physical team on the road that's very well coached, has a really well coached defense, which Duke does. Hey, take the win, like, gladly. It's a 7. You covered the spread. Like, you somehow covered that spread. Like, take the win and leave. You're 5-1. You could easily be 6-0. Yeah, it's really hard to get up for back-to-back big games. And Notre Dame was able to do that. You were able to get out of there with the win. Yeah, go home, recover. That's what I was left with. I think Notre Dame's really good. I think Notre Dame has the potential for a playoff push still. I've actually been impressed with them.
I have so many mixed feelings on that game, because I think going on the road and playing a top 20 team and getting the win by a touchdown, like, that's a good thing, obviously. It also felt a little rough. And like you said, you're coming off the big emotional loss to Ohio State. You need to be glad just to come out of that game with a win. Man, it was ugly. Terrible fourth down decision-making the whole game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it does not help when your 2 best wide receivers are out. Notre Dame has played 6 receivers this season pretty regularly, and half of them were out for this game, including Jaden Thomas and Jaden Greathouse. So yeah, that was a rough look. Their wide receivers had 4 catches, I believe. So yeah, and maybe that plays into some of the fourth down decision making, punting deep into opponent territory, that type of thing. Wasn't real pretty from Duke's end either. They missed a couple field goals. I think combined, the two teams were probably 30% on third down conversions. It was just real ugly. But yeah, 2 good defensive teams. Riley Leonard did get hurt on Duke's last play when he fumbled, and Notre Dame got their first defensive fumble recovery of the season.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he'll be back this season, but he'll probably miss a few weeks. High ankle sprain. So that sucks to see. Duke has some big games coming up the next several weeks. Obviously a good season for them so far. And so we really hope that he's back healthy, because he was their team the other night. Didn't have a great statistical game, but he popped off a few big runs. And yeah, just one of those quarterbacks that it's he's got a little bit more of the Tim Tebow effect, like just kind of put the team on his back, and it's not always going to be Purdy, but he does a good job. So yeah, just kind of burn this game from your memory, I guess, regardless of which team you're rooting for. Like, it was just kind of ugly, but big win for Notre Dame, and they live to continue to fight for all their big picture goals this season. So that's what they needed. Let's see, what else do we have in the evening? Michigan State and Iowa, somewhat of a big game in the Big Ten, I guess, if you hate yourself. Iowa beats Michigan State 26-16, so good for them getting the win. Michigan State, yeah, probably we might be looking at a quitting situation there, so something to keep in mind going forward. Virginia Tech beats Pitt 38-21. Oof, that's rough. Pitt is now 1-4. They were one of the teams that we felt the best about in the ACC probably coming into this season, and they're clearly a season that is quickly going down the toilet. On the other side, West Virginia, we were expecting bad things from them this year. They're now 4-1 after beating TCU 24-21. That's where you feel good about winning ugly.
We owe an apology to Neil Brown. By the way, not just us, but like almost all college football analysts or writers or anything. Everyone predicted that he would be fired probably within the first month. He was kind of a lame duck coach. Like, everyone felt that way. That team is good. Like West Virginia, they're playing close games, but they're winning these games. They're 4-1. They're 2-0 in the Big 12. That's a big win on the road against TCU, a team like TCU hadn't lost since opening week against Colorado. That's a team that played for a national championship, like 8 months ago, 9 months ago. Like, I don't know. Like, West Virginia, good for them. I'll just leave it there. I apologize. I was wrong. West Virginia is solid. It's good to see. Yeah, just happy for all those guys. Good for the coach. He should go. He should be saying more. Like, that's a guy that had to listen to a bunch of negative stuff all offseason. Neil Brown should be out there spouting off about how he's proving everyone wrong. I need to hear that.
They basically reinvented themselves as a Big Ten West program, and they're just bludgeoning people up front. Like, they don't have great quarterback play.
Yeah.
They just find a way, mostly in the trenches. So it's working. They're 4-1. Props to them. Okay, some people consider this to be a pretty big SEC matchup Saturday night. Alabama beats Mississippi State 40-17. Bama looking pretty solid. Mississippi State, we all know they're a very old team, lots of experience there. I just don't know that they're that good. Can you take away anything for either team from this game, or is it just kind of what it is?
It just is what it is. Yeah, there's no need to look too much into it. I will say Alabama's win against Ole Miss last week looks a little bit better a week later, right? Mississippi State, there will be some wins for Mississippi State out there. They don't match up well with Alabama. They just don't. They never have. So this is not a game that they win, even at home like this one was. Mississippi State will play other teams tough. Alabama is not one of those teams. So, it is what it is. No need to look too much more into that one.
Right. One more matchup just to mention. I didn't catch much of this, so I don't have a lot of thoughts, but Washington was almost a 3-touchdown favorite against Arizona, and they win 31-24. Michael Penix Jr., big numbers, but no touchdown passes for the first time, I would guess, in a while.
Sure.
We're going to see Washington play big name schools here pretty soon. They got to play Oregon. They got to play USC. So, I'm kind of along the lines of not a whole lot to take from that. Do you disagree with that at all?
No, same. I had money betting against Washington in that game. It was nothing to do with Washington. I didn't think Arizona was that good. It was just at some point like Washington's going to stop and focus on Oregon. That is, they have that game coming up. Arizona, they're not going to lose to Arizona. Or at least they didn't think that they were. Yeah, sleepwalking, like the best teams do it sometimes. And I think that's what it was. They were out to a 2-possession lead early, and then I think they just kind of packed it in, really.